Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. If you're like me and many of our listeners, talking to your kids about money is both so important, but also it can be really challenging. And today I'm going to have a guest who's also a friend who is tackling that subject by co authoring a book along with her son. Charlotte Geletka is the owner of Silver Penny Financial Planning. And she is also a huge financial literacy advocate, a certified financial planner. And like I said, I call her a friend. And Charlotte is releasing a new book called Battery the Bulldog and the Funny Money Tress with Andrew Gletka, her 12-year-old son. The book is being released on March 17th. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. It's so great to see you.
I should say welcome back because you are a returning guest, and it's been a minute since we spoke. And since then, you've got this beautiful book birthed into the world. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a proud book parent now. Battery, the Bulldog, and the Funny Money Tree. We're super excited, along with my 12-year-old son, Andrew. We wrote this book, 4 years ago, and it just takes a long time to get a book out in the world.
Well, it's such an amazing and ambitious project. And before we talk about the book itself, I would love to talk about, what you think about teaching kids about money, like what's age appropriate, how do you approach it as a financial professional? Give me the scoop as a mom of two
Yeah.
about those money talks.
Well, I think that you would probably agree, Melissa, that one of the things that we hear all the time is, I wish I knew more about how money works when I was growing up. I wish I understood money. I wish my parents talked about it. Or, people don't necessarily put it on the parents, just say, how can we go all the way through school
Yeah.
without knowing basics about money? I also, as you mentioned, am very passionate about financial literacy. And so for the past 10 years, I've been going out in my community. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and just talking about basic financial literacy concepts across all ages, from elementary kids all the way to high school kids. I also do kind of a money 101 recent grad talk I do for my clients. We produced a video that we've just sending people to have basic understanding. And I think that our industry, the financial services industry, cannot it doesn't always do a great job of being super educational and inclusive to these types of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so having my own children, I realized, hey, I want to do it a little differently. I want to talk to them about money, and it starts quite early. If you think about some of a child's very first interactions with money, I like to go to the tooth fairy, right? So how old were your children when they lost their first teeth? Do you remember?
Probably 4 or 5.
Okay. So 4 or 5 years old, a child understands something valuable when there's money underneath the pillow, right?
It's
So
true. Yeah.
if you think about that, at that point, the child is understanding like, "Ooh, I want the money. Money is good." And I think it's a little bit challenging because children aren't seeing money change hands the way they used to.
It's true. I agree.
You and we all have the funny story of we've heard it from years ago where the child talks to the Alexa and orders a bunch of things from Amazon. And,
Mhm.
at some point, a child has to have the consciousness of, hey, for the things to show up from Amazon, somebody had to pay for it, right?
Mhm.
They're seeing us though in the grocery store. They're seeing us tap the wallet, the credit card. So I'd say from an early age, children are picking up on the concept that there's an exchange of value, right? So if I buy groceries, there's an exchange of value. If I'm, at Target with my mom, kids in the grocery, I want this, I want that. They've got that, the gimmies, give me this, give me that. They understand because they're told, no, that costs money. We can't buy that. You can't. And
Mhm.
then they start to understand, ooh, if somebody gives me money, like the tooth fairy, that I can go spend it. And I would say a really fun exercise for a small child, give them $5, give them $10, let them pick something out at the grocery store,
Mhm.
let them actually give the money to the cashier and pay for it and get it counted out. It's a really fun exercise for a small child to start to understand the exchange of value, right? So that's the very early concepts. And in the book, Battery, the Bulldog, and the Funny Money Tree, it's a fun, whimsical kind of fable-like story, but we're telling very small children. It's geared towards kids 4 to 8. Although kids, all the way to 99 can read the book and
Of
enjoy it.
course.
But it is going to let them know, like, hey, money is something that is a resource that has to be managed, right?
Mhm.
So the characters in the story, one's a saver, one's a spender. They kind of see how that plays out. And it's the very beginning concepts of, hey, if I have this money, I can spend it or I can save it. How am I incentivized to do each? And of course, delayed gratification is really tough for small children,
Mhm.
and so we're trying to have this concept, but we've all come across kids, piggy banks have been around forever. And, I pose a question of you. Are one of you have 2 children.
Yep.
Are one of them a saver, one of them a spender? Like, what is their natural inclination with money?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I remember how I was labeled as a child. I was definitely a spender.
Okay.
And so was my brother was a saver, and that label kind of sticks with you. But I definitely have my older child is more of a spender, even a giveawayer, and my younger child it may be because we have more control over that money and kind of the allowance and things like that, less access to the debit card, but she's more of a saver and intends to have her money accumulating. Um,
Yeah, so it's interesting how children have that natural, inclination, right, before they've had the test of it. And I think, it's an interesting point you just said, like, before they have access to the card.
right.
So let's fast forward past kind of preschool, elementary age. Now they're starting to understand the concept of money. Then in middle school, children start to get some independence, right?
True. Definitely.
That
They
that could be a whole
should, I
nother.
think.
They should, I agree. That could be a whole nother topic. We all know that kids are, I think the tagline is under monitored online, over monitored offline, like in real life, right?
Mm,
Um, and I think culture is starting to kind of realize that. But as a child is in middle school and or late middle school, early high school, they might go out and do things with their friends that involve money.
mhm,
And so I don't know how you handle that, but there are a ton of companies now that are offering child friendly debit cards,
yep, we use
right?
Greenlight ourselves,
So
not
do
an
we.
endorsement, but it's been good.
Same. If anyone
Mm.
from Greenlight is listening, they're an Atlanta-based company. I would love to partner with you, but no, we use Greenlight as well. And Greenlight, if for those of you who are not familiar, is an app-based kind of financial education and kid-friendly debit card.
Mhm,
And the concept, I believe Capital One has one. Step Up is another financial kind of debit card use, which Mr. Beast just bought. If for those of you that have children that follow the Mr. Beast phenomenon. Um, so when we say green light, we're talking about the concept. I think Capital
mhm,
One has one, and a lot of
mhm,
financial institutions want to get in on this. So the child has a card. Appears to be like a physical credit card, and then the parent has an app. Okay.
mhm.
And it's linked to my bank account, say, and it is actually giving them money. You can give it. I've got it set up so that it's coming weekly.
Yep,
You can attach
same.
chores to it. You can also, there's different levels of subscription, but there's a savings bucket and an investing bucket. But back to the conversations of independence. So, just for a frame of reference, I have a 15-year-old who's a sophomore in high school, and I have a 12-year-old who's a sixth grader.
Mhm,
And the 12-year-old who's in 6th grade has just started to, after school, walk to a local kind of hangout. I guess our equivalent when we grew up would have been the mall. Kids
Mhm.
don't go to the mall anymore, but man,
I've
I
heard
would
it's
have
coming back. I
okay,
literally.
I would have loved my own credit card at the mall. I would have crushed the Hello Kitty situation. But anyways, the 12-year-old has a card and he goes and buys donuts and tacos and whatever 12-year-old boys like gum, like to buy.
Convenience
But he,
stores are their,
right, they're
their
they're convenience
weakness.
stores. Right. So a few things are happening then. That one, the child is getting some autonomy, independence, but also the money, whatever's on the cool thing about the cards is it's not unlimited. There's a limited amount of funds on that card. So they
There are
see like,
boundaries, and it will be declined if it doesn't work.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct. But it's like, hey, I bought donuts for my entire friend group and now I
Mhm.
just spent $40. And so they have a concept. They see what happens
It's
and they
true.
see it run out. So now all of a sudden they're getting the concept of um you know, that money, the use case, right? And also the limited quantity. When it's gone situation. So you're beginning to kind of do in a management. So that's middle school. They're kind of raising the independence, using their money on their own. And
Mhm.
kids love that. They're able to use that and then they can see and kids are processing it differently. High school kids, so um, a lot of these apps now have the feature, it's like the pay me. So remember when we were babysitting and you had to get paid in cash?
Yep.
Now you can send a QR code. There is a high school girl in our carpool at our school, and she decided she was going to wrap presents for busy working moms. So I loaded up my car presents, gave it to her. She sent me the QR code of how to pay her. The money goes directly on her Greenlight or equivalent card, and then so she's earning money. So now they're understanding the concept of, working for the dollar, appreciating the dollar, and then also then they have the choice, are you saving it? Are you spending it? And my son started an interior mobile detailing business, same thing. So he worked all summer, and then as the school year progresses, he's using that money to go out to eat with his friends, and that money is dwindling. So it's gonna be interesting for him to see, um,
I
you
see
know
that too. My son has, he's not started his own business. He's an employee of the school district, so I see when the paydays happen, and so, as does he. It's every other week, and then, he's watching kids after school, and then, I also see, like, for my spender, like, "Oh, you just got paid, and you're not getting paid for 2 weeks, but you're spending all the money, like, day 1 or 2." And so that's a good conversation. It's not I'm not micromanaging it, but it's like, "Hey, don't you want that money to last?" And things like that, where you can kinda learn that skill set in the wild versus just doing what your parents tell you to do.
Right, and also I f different, parenting analogies, but, they sort of have a safety net under them, and you want
Mhm.
people to understand this before they get launched, right?
Yes.
And so there's so many concepts that are paramount to understanding this, and I think too, these are the basics. Money, switching something of value, having money. Money is what we use to exchange goods and services, sort of the basic premise. And then through that as the basic platform, maybe you go into savings and compound interest. Oh, you're getting 3% on that. What does that mean? Oh, you want to invest it. And then a lot of this investing conversations, they need to happen because your child or the children in your life are going to learn about it, but their exposure to it is going to be different. Think about what's out there in the world. They're going to get TikTok financial advice. So they're going to see, and remember, people on TikTok that are giving financial advice can say anything they want. These are not
It's true.
qualified professionals. So they're seeing the gamified version of investing. It's not only investing, it's also gambling.
Mhm.
I'm having the conversation with my teenage son about gambling because it's so accessible to him. They have this in their hand and they see trading, they see investing, they see gambling. And so those conversations as well, um, need to happen. You need to be transparent because they're not getting investment advice from you. They're getting it from the parent. They're getting it from somebody else,
Mhm.
i.e., whoever they're staring at on their screen. Um,
Well, and some of it's not even investment advice, it's consumption.
yeah, bingo.
Consumption demonstrations that have no context to financial realities that are, on social media and, just like the gambling you mentioned, like prediction markets and so many things that are like gamified in a way that's great for whatever company your money ends up at, but not necessarily healthy for the consumer themselves or your kids.
Right, and that's how and guess what? The companies that wanna make the long play, they know this, and so
Mhm.
they are out there gamifying it. There's some large companies I won't name who have made entire large business cases for this. They rope people in their teens and early 20s, and then they want them to become investment clients, and so over time, that's their first exposure, and this is just one side of the money education. I think along with it, like, different professions. But I'm hearing a lot more intelligent questions of, hey, how much money would I make if I did this? And kids also they can see how much houses cost, Zillow. They can see, so they're having a realization of, wow, what kind of job do you need to get paid to have that college debt? I think the high school kids of today are questioning and wondering like, "Hey, if this costs this much, what kind of job am I gonna have on the other end? What is
Mhm.
the cost of college debt?" The generation right above them has been very vocal about this, which is good, but these kind of concepts, then you kind of launch into credit, the cost of using other people's money. I touch on that a little bit in the book. One fun story is one of the characters, um, uses we call it the Bulldog Bank to purchase his things, and so you see that he is basically living on credit, right? So
Mhm.
he's the house, the car, the fancy lifestyle. We try to have that thread in a very developmentally appropriate kid fun story, but you see the keeping up with the Joneses, right? And
Mhm.
it's payment focused versus what you can actually afford. And that's something that I really want people to understand at an early age is, hey, when you buy the car, don't just focus on the monthly payment. Think about the cost of interest that you're going to pay over the lifetime of the loan, right?
Mhm.
So concepts like this, um, when you buy a home, how much of each payment goes towards interest and goes towards principal? That's a concept I think people don't realize until they're well into adulthood, and these are things that we can start to have conversations with to help people, and people want to know this. People want to know this information. It's
Mhm.
just not part of the um normal high school curriculum. Although I will give a shout out to the state of Georgia because financial literacy is now required
Same for
to be
Michigan. Yeah.
yeah, to be part of the curriculum. And we're seeing this more and more, this basic financial education. And I think it's great. And I think we need to have open, honest conversations. I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but typically when you asked an adult, how much money do you make? They wouldn't really tell you.
No.
And I get that it can be slightly uncomfortable, so I would suggest give a range. Be like, "Well, I'm a" let's see, someone's a PA, physician's assistant. They could say, "The range for PAs and the jobs that I've had and the job in this area could be between, 90,000 and 200,000 or something." Give a range, but it needs to be realistic. We need to have open, honest conversations about money so that we're telling, kids the reality and also the reality of what life costs.
And I think,
Kids
like,
d
one of the first places you can introduce that or not first, one of the critical places you introduce that is paying for college because that is one area where uh, in many cases, families, commit their students to repaying loans, without always knowing the repercussions. It's not the first time that you make a financial decision, but is so critical depending on the family's financial circumstances and how much parents will pay.
And you and I know that the reality of there is a desire to give your kid everything at the cost of expensive cost, but if it's the first largest decision financial decision that you make, and let's just say that you walk out with $200,000 of college debt and you become, a social worker, it's gonna be
Mhm.
really hard to climb out of that, so you're beginning your financial life as an adult in the hole,
Mhm.
and so that's a concept, a lot of financial reality, or I always try to tell people when I'm giving money 101, the decisions that you make early in your life, your financial life in your early 20s really sets you up for the rest of your life. And I say you can choose. You can be on the pay now, play later plan, or play now and pay later. And I know that's an oversimplification for a lot of really complex financial topics, but if you think about and I have a fun illustration, if you think about, you're 25, you got your first job, you move out, do you get a roommate and you have to spend a little less on rent and save a little bit more? Do you put a little bit more in your 401k before you have larger financial responsibilities? And then we fast forward 20 years and say, what happens when you're 45, right? And the decisions that you made at 25 financially have a very large impact. Um, I was fortunate enough that I was raised by people who were, my dad was in the industry. And so we talked about money openly. I was the only 8-year-old with a money market account. So I had a concept of this. But when I was young and early married, my husband at the time was a physician and we actually lived very below our means, and some friends made comments like, "I don't understand why you guys are living," you know, I forgot the like, "Why is everything, like, super IKEA?" Like, because we knew that the decisions that we made early were going to impact the next phases of life.
Makes sense. And, in an ideal world, eventually you get to an equilibrium where you can use your financial resources now and also have the confidence that you are saving for later. And in the meantime,
It
though, overspending early,
Hey.
going into debt, things like that are just really difficult to dig yourself out of. So starting
Yeah, and we're not
conservative
saying
always helps.
yeah, 100%. We're not saying don't, I understand the YOLO concept and like, but how can you have, I like to call it conscious spending,
Hmm.
So that's fine if you choose to go on that like super awesome vacation. You might need to keep your car another year. Those types of things. I'm sure
Well,
you do this every
trade-offs
day.
is such a builder of resilience. You can do
Mhm.
anything, but not everything. And spending for contentment versus spending for more and abundance and the most is, it can be defined, may result in different choices or outcomes as well. Tell me a little bit about the book itself and how you and your son decided to put this together. Like, what was the genesis?
So, fun story. I mean, you're reading at night to your small child. He was about 4, and, I'm pretty tired at the end of the day, so I just didn't have the energy to read stories. So I said, "I'll tell you stories." So we would come up with stories together, and I'm also thinking I need to teach him about money, and so, we kind of created this story together where I
Oh,
said, "Hey," there was a character and he named him Battery, and which is kind of a funny, whimsical, but that's how it is with 4-year-olds.
yeah.
They have an amazing imagination, and so we talked about that, and, I was telling him what happens to we kind of created it together, and then I thought, "This is a really great story," and as a parent, you read a lot of bedtime stories, and I'm like, "I'd like to read something that's, like, easy to read," not that
Yeah.
this
Not too many words.
Thank you for saying it, but I was thinking about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, what can I read? And then what is fun and enjoyable, but, hey, there's also an important kinda story tucked in there
Mhm.
with fun characters, and so he and I wrote this together, and then I said, "Hey, this is, like, a cool story. I'm gonna write this down and see if we can't make a book of this." And so I kinda wrote it, combed through it, and then thought, "This I want this to be a children's book. I want this to be out in the world. I want other kids to hear this story. I want parents to have something fun and engaging to read." And people did ask me all the time, like, "What are some ways to get started with your kids, and how can you teach them about money?" start from the very beginning. And so then we started to go out and look for publishing. It's really difficult for a first time author to get a book published. This process took, gosh, 4 to 5 years. And, I got a lot of no's. And then a local Atlanta publisher was going to open a children's book imprint. And I learned about that, reached out to them, and they said yes. And I think also having a child author, having my son be a major contributor in writing this story was really exciting to them. And he attended all the publishing meetings. So that was really fun. He selected the illustrator, which
Oh,
is also
I
a
love that.
really fun process. Yeah. So we got to interview illustrators and um then I recently have told him like, okay, now it's time for us to go out. We've created the book,
Mhm.
but I told him books don't sell themselves. So we have to go out. And I said, you're going to do a lot of story times. And he said, what? He's a 12-year-old boy now. And I said, you're going to have to read the stories to little kids. So that's going to be an interesting process.
Oh, that's so fun. So Andrew's excited about his work, and I think this is just such a fun way to start the money conversation, and I can see it being a gift for young kids of pro planning clients. So,
Yes.
congratulations on bringing something into the world that has legacy, has impact, and is really contributing to better outcomes for families and their kids.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. And thank you for the work that you do to help women become more financially knowledgeable and empowered because we know that women are helping the community at large, in their work in the home and outside the home. So thank you for furthering that mission.
Well, we know that women are both breadwinners and change makers, and I just appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Charlotte.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to proplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.